In 2009, far below the oppressive heat of Colombia's Cerrejón coal mine, paleontologists worked methodically through strata of stone that once belonged to a vanished rainforest. This was a forest that thrived nearly 60 million years ago, in the quiet aftermath of the dinosaurs' disappearance. Their task was routine extracting flattened traces of ancient life, but one discovery abruptly broke that rhythm and froze the team in disbelief. From the rock emerged a vertebra of staggering proportions, wider and thicker than a human wrist. Instinctively, the scientists reached for the most logical explanation. In the Paleocene swamps, crocodilians ruled as titans, and even imagining one as long as a bus already strained plausibility. A massive reptile fit the story. Yet the bones refused to cooperate. Their curves were wrong. Their structure didn't align with the familiar anatomy cataloged from crocodile spines. Something fundamental didn't add up. The realization arrived like a jolt. These bones did not belong to a crocodile at all. They were snake vertebrae, and not merely from a large snake but from Titanoboa itself. The Cerrejón site, it turned out, was no ordinary dig. It was a sealed window into the Paleocene, an entire rainforest entombed by sudden floods of mud and ash. Leaves, fish, turtles, entire moments of an ancient ecosystem preserved in remarkable clarity. And within that preserved world lay the remains of the largest snake ever known. As excavation continued, the evidence multiplied. More vertebrae surfaced, dozens of them. Ribs followed, along with surrounding fauna. Any hope that this was an anomaly dissolved. The fossils were consistently immense, unmistakably real, and utterly without precedent. Slowly, a terrifying silhouette took shape in animals so colossal, it redefined the biological limits of snakes altogether. When the research team began calculating its size, disbelief returned. Measurements were checked, recalculated, and questioned again and again. Surely something was wrong. But the numbers held. The data pointed to a serpent exceeding 15 meters in length. If true, this was no ordinary predator. Titanoboa stood as the dominant land hunter of its time, reigning after the dinosaurs had already fallen. Its sheer scale implied Paleocene ecosystems that were hotter, thicker, and far more extreme than previously imagined worlds, pressing life itself to the edge of possibility. Even conservative estimates placed Titanoboa at roughly 42 feet long, with some projections stretching beyond 50 feet. Its weight likely reached between 2,000 and 2,500 pounds. By comparison, the largest reliably measured anaconda barely reached 28 feet and weighed around 500 pounds. Titanoboa dwarfed it nearly double the length and several times the mass. Yet the real mystery runs deeper than size alone. How could scientists reconstruct such enormity from fragments of spine? The answer lies in consistency. Modern snakes follow predictable scaling patterns. Vertebra size closely mirrors total body length. By comparing Titanoboa's bones with those of living constrictors, boas and anacondas, researchers could work backward with surprising accuracy. But this only sharpened the greater question. Why did such a giant ever exist at all? The key is heat. Snakes are ectotherms, entirely dependent on their environment to regulate body temperature. That dependence governs everything: their metabolism, growth rate, digestion, and ultimately how large they can become. Warmer conditions drive faster metabolic processes. Faster metabolism supports rapid growth and the energy demands of massive bodies. Titanoboa, then, was not just an apex predator. It was a living measurement, a biological thermometer etched in bone. Its existence points unmistakably to a world far warmer than today, a planet where tropical heat lingered relentlessly. To truly grasp Titanoboa, one must step back nearly 58 million years into the early Paleocene. The Earth was healing. Ecosystems were reassembling from catastrophe. And in the tropics, life surged under suffocating warmth, shaping creatures so vast they still challenge our sense of what nature can create. Global temperatures then stood far above anything we know today. In what is now northern Colombia, evidence points to year-round averages hovering around 32 degrees Celsius, with almost no seasonal break. Imagine a rainforest that never exhales its heat. Not at dusk, not at dawn. A place where the atmosphere itself presses in like an endless steam chamber. There were no polar ice caps, no winters to reset the system, only uninterrupted heat spanning the planet. Forests sweated constantly. Rivers warmed under the sun, and life, unrestrained, expanded. For cold-blooded creatures, warmth removes the greatest limitation of all. This is why today's tropical regions, the Amazon, the Congo, Southeast Asia, are still not enough. They are paradoxically too cool. Modern anacondas and pythons already strain against the ceiling set by our present climate. To go beyond them into Titanoboa's realm required a planet turned several degrees hotter and held there for millions of years. Without that furnace-like baseline, Titanoboa's vast body simply could not function. Its immense coils demanded constant heat to drive metabolism and move blood through more than 50 feet of muscle. The Sarajevo site lays this world bare. Layer after layer reveals dense plant remains. Enormous turtle shells appear, some rivaling pool tables in size. Early crocodilian relatives emerge with broad, crushing jaws, creatures built not for speed, but for ambush and bone-breaking force. This was no clear, fast river system. It was a swamp forest. Slow water, dark and tannin-stained, roots knotted together, vegetation choking the light. Sound would have been muted by rain and insects. Vision limited. In such a setting, sheer size became an advantage. A giant snake could disappear here. Water buoyed its mass. Murky currents masked its outline. Heat and humidity kept its muscles perpetually primed, ready to move briefly, then rest for weeks while digesting colossal meals. Titanoboa was not a mistake of evolution. It was an inevitable outcome. Extreme temperatures, abundant prey, a labyrinth of swamps built for patience. So how did it hunt? Forget the cinematic myths. Titanoboa was not a land-charging horror. It wasn't a tree-dweller or a fast-moving constrictor. At over 40 feet long, speed on land was impossible. Its body would drag, sink, and strain against gravity. But water changed everything. In Paleocene swamps, Titanoboa behaved less like a snake we know today and more like a crocodile. Slow, silent, half-submerged, it slid between fallen logs and tangled roots with barely a ripple. For a creature of that scale, invisibility wasn't a trick, it was a way of life. It did not pursue. It did not rush. It waited, hours, days, motionless, and when prey drifted close enough, the strike was catastrophic. Biomechanical models suggest constriction forces exceeding 400 psi, enough to collapse a crocodile's ribcage almost instantly. Modern boas rely on cutting off blood flow, but at Titanoboa's scale, the distinction hardly mattered. Escape was not an option. Its menu likely included giant turtles, slow and plentiful, early crocodiles still smaller and not yet dominant, large fish trapped in narrow channels. Even early mammals, small, vulnerable, and doomed if they lingered near the water's edge. Water was more than a hunting ground. It was survival itself. Buoyancy supported Titanoboa's enormous weight. On land, movement would have been punishing, organs compressed by its own mass, breathing labored, digestion sluggish. In water, those limits softened. And just as crucially, water helped regulate temperature. Snakes absorb heat from their surroundings, and in a world this hot, water offered balance cooling when necessary, without sacrificing the high metabolic output its size demanded. So don't imagine Titanoboa crawling across open ground like a nightmare made flesh. Picture it instead slipping soundlessly through black water, eyes breaking the surface, waiting. And if it was so perfectly adapted, so successful, why did it vanish? The answer, as always, lies not in failure but in a world that changed. The planet moved on and Titanoboa could not move with it. When the Paleocene faded, Earth began a long descent into cooler conditions, first subtly, then decisively. Over a few million years, global temperatures slipped downward by several degrees. For a cold-blooded giant, that shift was not survivable. It was a quiet verdict. For ectotherms, heat is not a luxury, it is the engine. As temperatures fall, metabolism slows. Muscles lose urgency, digestion drags, growth stalls. In a body as enormous as Titanoboa's, those changes were devastating. Maintaining such mass required constant energy. But in a cooling world, the snake could no longer hunt efficiently, process food fast enough, or sustain dominance. Its decline was not sudden, it was prolonged. A slow starvation written into physiology. Yet temperature was only part of the unraveling. The living world around it was transforming. Mammals, once small, marginal survivors in dinosaur shadows, began to expand, diversify, and claim new roles. Warm-blooded and resilient, they remained active as climates cooled, competing for resources that giant reptiles depended on. At the same time, the Paleocene-soaked, steaming rainforests began to dry. Rivers shifted towards seasonal rhythms. Swamps fragmented. The dense, humid labyrinth Titanoboa required was steadily erased. More losses followed. Giant turtles vanished. Massive crocodilians declined. One by one, the pillars of the food web collapsed. And Titanoboa did not fall to claws or disease. It was not outmatched in battle. It was undone by climate alone. A few degrees of cooling, and the largest snake to ever exist simply faded from reality. That truth should linger. Climate does not merely influence ecosystems. It sets the boundaries of possibility itself. Titanoboa was a creature that feels almost forbidden too large, too heavy, too dependent on conditions that were never permanent. Yet for a fleeting chapter of Earth's history, everything aligned: heat, prey, landscape. And for millions of years, an impossible serpent ruled the swamps of ancient Colombia. Then the balance shifted, and it was gone, leaving only fossils and unanswered questions. Before we part, allow me a brief moment. Asking for support is never easy, so I'll be direct. These videos are built with care, curiosity, and an obsession with doing justice to the unknown. I want to go further, stronger visuals, deeper research, stories that truly ignite awe. But that kind of work demands time, and time is difficult to claim alone. That is why channel memberships are launching. Becoming a member isn't a donation, it's an investment in the space to create more ambitious films. If you believe in this journey and want to help keep these explorations alive, consider clicking the join button. This channel exists because of you. Thank you, and when you're ready, the next video is waiting. I think it will stay with you.